This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy holidays and welcome to the December meeting of the North Haven Board of Finance. We are down two members this evening. Mr. Hallahan and Lori Jean Hannon were unable to make it, but we do have a quorum and we will go through our regular business. We're going to start with the minutes of our meeting from November 20th of 2024. I'd ask the board for a motion.
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second. Any comments on the minutes?
I just have one comment on the first page. Nope, I take that back. On the second page, under old business, Ingrid did a great job presenting the CAFRA report last month, but as I read it, not so much the CAFRA, but the actual single audit, we actually had a couple of different dings against us, and I think it's only one is mentioned here, which is the lack of timely bank reconciliations. And I think that was one, but then there was also an issue, internal control for financial reporting that related to general ledger maintenance. And then there was a third issue related to the state audit for the coronavirus reporting. I think 4 out of the 21 projects, the amount reported did not equal the general ledger. Would you say that that's accurate, Ingrid?
Yes.
I know I'm catching you off guard here, but I have it here if you want to review it.
Yes.
But I think those are the 3 things, and I'm just wondering if, in the interest of accuracy, we should actually mention all 3.
All right, so we would need an amended motion, Nancy, and I'm comfortable with it being a little broad so that you and Ingrid could work out the language a little bit later, but we would need an amended motion.
I'll amend.
Well, why don't we let Nancy amend it so that she's got the...
Okay.
So I would just add lack of timely bank reconciliations, general ledger maintenance, and federal coronavirus recovery fund project management.
So I think what I heard is a motion by Nancy Barrett to amend the minutes to include the 3 things she just mentioned. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Before we move on, there is an item on the agenda. I'm going to let Mike explain, but it's not going to occur this evening. It's the very first item.
Yeah, this is a mistake. This item should not be on the agenda. This action is taken by me at this board next year, not this year. So we need to make an amendment to remove this from the agenda. It should be removed.
I think it's a good point, Mike, and maybe just bookkeeping or housekeeping, but we should probably do that, so.
So I'll make the motion.
Yeah. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we have nothing under old business. Under new business, we do have our regular reports. Why don't we start with the town side revenue? I'll just say, and then I'll let the members ask or make comments, that we continue to do extremely well in our short-term interest. We've in fact exceeded our budget already for the year, and we're only 5 months into our 12-month year. Conversely, we're a little bit low on the building fees. We've achieved about 25% of those. And likewise, on the fire fees, about 20%. I guess for those out in the audience at home, we would normally, if it was just a full pro rata, be at about 41%. That's never sort of hard and fast, but that's the math. Any comments, questions by the members?
I'll make a couple statements here. So the building permit fees are light. What's happened is some of the projects that we thought would happen in November and December now pushed off into the first of the year. So I think that explains that partially. A cautionary tale, some of our investments are maturing at the high rate and they will then revert, should we decide to renew them at the various institutions that we have, they will revert to a lower interest rate. So I make this point because it may appear, if we were to try to straight line this number, it's not going to be the exact number on a straight line basis. Some of these are maturing. They're offering some of the institutions. Rich and I are already watching this very closely, and it will not be at the current interest rates that is yielding this interest income.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes. But to the chairman's point, we've already exceeded the budgeted revenue amount for the year. So I think even if it flatlined, we would still be in a good.
Well, we're going to need a lot of incremental revenue on this. I don't think we're going to get the Quinnipiac money for reasons that I've stated here. I'd rather not review those again. So there's $300,000 right there. So we're going to have to drive some of these numbers much higher than what the budgetary number is. And lastly, the good thing we have coming is that January is the next cycle for us to receive taxes. So there'll be a lot of income coming in January.
All right, once again, thank you, Mike. Members, any other comments, questions on the revenue?
No, there's just a typo on this top of the RV.
Yeah,
There's a misspelling
Yeah, sorry.
on the report.
revenue.
It's Revu.
Yeah.
All right, hearing no other comments or questions on revenue, let's go to the expenditures. I did look them over. Mike mentioned this last month, but I'll say it because I look at the same thing usually. If you look at the report on the last page, it shows we've used about 48% of the budget. But once you back out the encumbrances, which are about 1.4%, and probably another 8% for the insurance, and then the bonds and notes, all of which have been fully paid for the year, I calculate we're at about 39%, which means we're about 2% low on the expenditures. And again, I looked at the utilities, the maintenance. Maintenance is high in some cases, but the fuel, they're all actually pretty good in most of the departments. I saw very few that were running even beyond the pro rata portion where they are. So all in all, I'm comfortable with where we are year to date, but would obviously enjoy any comments by the members.
I'm just curious, the public stenographer, that kind of caught my eye. It's on page 4.
We had a little bit there of previous billings that were not submitted on time. She wasn't caught up. We had to actually reach out to her, and that's the reason why the line is over.
Okay.
There's only one person that does this type of work, and she's really busy.
Ingrid, on page 17, Insurance General. We're at 101%. Those premiums that we paid.
Yeah, we shouldn't get any more premiums, but they did run a little bit higher than expected.
So, Mr. Frieda, could you please, since we're on that particular topic, could you please explain, for my own edification, the workers' compensation? I know that we as a town are self-insured, but are we fully self-insured for workman's comp, or do we have this particular budget and then some sort of gap insurance?
Well, we're fully insured on workman's comp, and we have a provider that helps us process the claims. But Rich and I are looking at a different model, and we're meeting with KERMA in January to see if we should make a move and switch, because our workman's compensation claims, as I've mentioned a couple of times here before, we've had a lot of people injured and a lot of people hurt. So fully insured currently. We have an agency that handles the claims for us and processes them, but we're looking to see if there's another way to change this so that we do not have volatility in this line.
So this is not like our medical insurance, where we have a certain amount of funds and we show 100% paid, but actually the costs are far in excess of that. This is more traditional insurance, where we pay the premiums and then the claims are covered by the insurance?
No, we're the insurance.
We're
We're-
self-insured. I
okay.
think
It's
it's,
the same model.
So it's the
Yeah.
exact same model? I
Right.
see, okay.
So it's the same model. We're the insurer, so.
but Inga, I noticed actually that we don't amortize that month to month? 'cause
We did that, but we made a decision to put the whole amount in it because we're running really high on claims.
Right.
So if we had a reserve, which we don't, we could have amortized it within 12 months, but we need it,
It sounds like we're in
Sure.
danger going over here.
yes.
We might be, yes.
Yeah, that's sort of my question is, are we at risk of going over in this?
And that's the exact reason why we're looking at a different model.
Yes.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, last year too, we had an extra contribution due to that because the claims were extremely high.
Minor question, Inga, but on the transfer station, page 12, last item under the transfer station, we spent a little bit this year, 4,400, but we've encumbered 10 grand for permits and application.
I'll have to review that, but that's usually state permits. And some of them, they're annual, some of them, they're every 5 years, so it depends.
That's exactly what it is.
Yes.
You know, when we deal with transfer stations as municipalities, you have to get permits approved by DEEP. So that's exactly what that is.
Okay.
I had a question about, back on page 3, under building inspections, again, given the fact that our building fees revenue is a little on the low side, I'm seeing that the overtime is at 230%.
Yes, we had a consultant that resigned, and somebody else is covering for his work.
Oh, he resigned, I see.
Yes.
Got it, okay. So is there a plan to hire someone or just continue with overtime?
I'm sure there is, they'll have to find one.
Okay.
So, yeah, and to this point, if you look at the 38.5% on the full-time line, you see that it's below, it's below the percentage. So in other words, even though on this particular line, it's 7,000 over on overtime, it's 210,000 under on full-time.
Well, but the budget for full-time is 341,000, and the budget for overtime is only 6,000. So
Yeah,
so I don't know if you can exactly use the percentages there, because
Well, no,
the
but-
budgeted amount is
Well,
totally
but you can do the math,
You can do the
right?
math.
Because it's about a 3%
Yeah.
benefit,
Right.
that's about $9,500, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're over 78, it's actually a push or better.
My point on this is exactly that. The 13,000, the 7,000 over is also reflected in the fact that the full-time line is under. That's the point.
Right. So rather than 42%, it's at 38.5.
Right.
I agree with you, yeah.
Ingrid, my only other question, I'm pretty sure we've covered this in the past, but we've expended 0 for water, i.e. fire protection, page 16. We don't get billed more than once a year for that?
We get billed twice, usually one comes in January
Oh,
and
okay.
the other one in June.
Okay, thanks. All right. Do the members have any other questions or comments?
No.
Will we be expecting any more costs associated with the annual special audit? Page 5 and 6.
Yes, we are in the middle of our audit right now. Our auditors have been on site for the last 2 weeks, and they're coming back in January. So that line will go over this year due to the fact that our audit was late, so we had billing
So we did
from-
two in 1 year,
Right,
so
we
I
did
wasn't quite
that,
sure.
and also, we're using Joe as a consultant as well, because we have to transition everything, we have to start from scratch on everything, so.
So when it says audit consultant, that's who that is?
That's the audit, yes.
I see. Okay.
Anything else?
I think the only other question that I had was related to, I think at the end with community services. I think there was a big expense for pool supplies,
Yep, I noticed that too.
and I was a little perplexed by that. because,
Expense of what?
what page is that? That's a great question. Here we go. Page 16, pool equipment, which I assumed would have been covered by some of the costs.
Yes, so this is actually, we're charging here. If you notice in page 15,
Uh-huh.
our full-time lines and part-time lines are under budget because our maintenance man, he actually resigned. So we had to outsource his work, so that's maintenance.
Oh, so pool equipment?
Yeah, she's asked about the
Yes,
equipment, sorry.
yes, it is. We are actually putting the maintenance. The recreation center maintenance is different from pool maintenance. We had a
Yes.
full-time position
Well,
for
you're
that.
saying the gentleman resigned and you've got an outside person?
Right, we
And you
have
put it in charge of this line
we're
rather-
charging it to that line currently,
Right.
yes.
There's no good line for it, basically.
I see.
Right, there was no other line.
Right.
Okay.
We could, for next budget season, create a line for pool maintenance.
I see.
All right. Can we move on to the Board of Ed? The only thing I would say, and maybe it's just the way I read it, but when you read Christian's cover here, and you get to the 5600 tuition, he says this budget line is net of the excess cost funding. And when you look at that line, it shows negative available budget of minus 750,000. That's on page 2 of the report. What struck me as odd, and then when you go in the back, he does have the grants, and this is included in the grants, and shows that we received 0 to date. So I think it's obvious to me anyways that that we haven't gotten in the grant yet for that. So when he said it was net of excess cost funding, I actually don't think it is. I think he means to say that's the intention, but I don't think at this particular moment it is, because it shows it's way over expended, and it shows we haven't got the grant in, so. Having said that, I'll open it up to the floor.
So for those watching at home, there's 2 points made regarding the operating budget, that they have a tuition line that is over, and that's what the chair just mentioned, that is net of excess funding and excess cost funding. And this is as a result of unbudgeted special education outplacements. And then there's also an additional line item related to technology-related hardware due to necessary security purchases. So they also provide update to the reserve accounts, medical, workers' comp, special education, capital reserve, and non-lapsing reserve account for, if you add them all up, adds up to a total of $3 million. But I did have one question related to the medical reserve account, and it says adjusted to remove next month's contribution.
Well, they've been doing that on every report, Nancy. Maybe it just hasn't come up before, but that's the way they've traditionally been presented the last few months anyways.
I thought they just did that for the 1 month. Is this going to be an every other month type thing? I'm just, because their balance is so large?
I don't know, but it does show in their report. So if you go to the report in the back, it shows,
It's hard to read.
well, what it says is employer contributions. So, Yeah, it says adjust to remove next month's contribution, so.
Right, so I don't see anything for BOE employer contributions under December, and that's why.
On the special report here? You see the
Under
574?
December?
Yeah, she's looking at.
This is December here?
I see something for,
No?
sorry, the first line is, not the second line. Employee,
Right.
yeah, employer but not employee. Got it.
And even with that, at the median, they have 106% funding level.
Again, I, just to, not to belabor this point, but at the end of the last fiscal year, they had a $676,000 surplus, and they were supposed to deposit $200,000 in workers' comp, $200,000 in special ed, and $276,000 in the non-lapsing fund. And I don't see those additions.
We have not done that yet because we don't agree with what he has. So we're still reconciling.
So the question is, where is that money? Because obviously you had to close out last year's budget, and that surplus had to go somewhere, and I thought the idea was it was supposed to go into the non-lapsing fund, and from there, they could distribute it.
They have different books, so our books don't agree with their books, so we're reconciling right now
I see.
to see what's going on. I did let you guys know in the beginning of the year that he did not have that surplus of 600,000.
Right, she's
He did
mentioned
mention
for you.
that.
Right, so,
Right. So when we finish reconciling, we'll know what the true surplus is, and then we can transfer that.
The money's held by the town. The
Right,
town,
we
despite
are
the
held.
records, the town is in charge of the actual money. And so they have
Right.
to go to the finance office to actually ask for the actual dollars, if you
Right.
will. And so Ingrid's correct, she did mention it before. They have yet to really fully reconcile the last year, so in effect, Ingrid doesn't agree with the 676, and once they provide the reconciliation, it may be 676 and maybe less.
I see. Okay, so it's sitting in a general fund or
In the
somewhere?
general fund, yes.
Well, it's sitting in the town's, on
In
the
the
town's.
town.
In the
yeah,
town's,
right.
on the town's ledger, in
Yes.
some capacity?
Right.
Okay, because, again, I wasn't quite sure how that worked with this new legislation that doesn't require our permission to transfer the surplus funds.
If they have any surplus, they can use
They
it,
can
but
have
if
it,
they
right.
don't,
Okay.
Right.
they're not able to.
And then again, within their two-page budget report, the very last line, line item 8200, it says BOE CIF of $200,000. And so is that something that they have infused into this budget, or I'm not exactly sure what
I
that
don't
is?
know what the line is, I'll have to
Okay,
ask.
all right. And again, their budget is technically, is over. It's at almost 52%, but about 10 million is in encumbrances. So I think if you were to back the encumbrances out, your percentage usage without the encumbrances would be about 35%.
Nancy, I'm sorry, I may have missed your point on the BOE CIF. What was your point again, please?
I was just trying to understand what that was.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Whether that was an infusion from another source into the budget.
Well, it's a budgeted item. I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't remember what it is either, honestly, but.
Okay. And I think that's all I have.
Members, any other questions or comments on the Board of Ed reports?
And they have also provided a report from the bus company. So I think they're on top of that, and they're trying to determine next steps.
Yes.
I'll accept the motion to move the reports.
Make a motion to move the reports.
I second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. So moved. All right, since there's no other business in front of the board, we will move to public comment. Please, Sally Boynton.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Sally Buemi, 5 Blossom Drive.
We have to give you an
This has been
exemption
a-
someday for that, you know?
Yeah, well, Try to follow the rules. Your meeting went quick, so I will try to be quick with my my comments. Mr. Chairman, I think you know me pretty well. We served for 4 years together on the Board of Selectmen. You've heard me countless times here making comments at Board of Finance meetings. I think, or at least I hope, that you know I always do what I think is best for the town. And I'm starting my 12th year on the Board of Selectmen. I'm the longest serving third selectman, at least for the last 135 years. That was as far back as I was able to go, to 1890. And I'm the longest serving third selectman. And I hope to continue to serve as a selectman for years to come. It has been my honor to play a role in this town government for so many years. And yes, you're well aware there's been some disagreements, but I think that cooperative accomplishments far outweigh those disagreements over the years. And I have great respect for Mr. Frieda, and I've said many times, and I'll say it again, he's the hardest working chief elected official in our state, and I hope that the respect is mutual. With that said, Mr. Chairman, I must bring something to your attention which is of great concern to me, and it involves the Quinnipiac University voluntary contribution that was made for last fiscal year, 23-24. This is the first time I am mentioning this Quinnipiac voluntary payment at all. You know that. And I'm doing so only because of statements made by Mr. Frieda at the December 4th Board of Selectmen meeting. They were made during Mary White's public comment. And I urge you, Mr. Chairman, to watch the meeting. You're a very busy man. It starts at 1 hour and 5 minutes, so you don't have to listen to the whole meeting. But I just want to give a little background, especially for the folks watching at home. The Quinnipiac voluntary payment has been a regular line item in our revenue budget for many years, about eight years. Since the December Board of Selectmen meeting, I've been reviewing all of the year-end revenue reports from the last 10 years. And I think it's been in there for about 8. The fact that it is a regular revenue line item is very relevant. The 23-24 fiscal year budget was $121,500,383, which means the revenue budget, which included that $300,000 from Quinnipiac, totaled that amount, and the expenditure budget totaled that exact same amount. So when the budget was approved at the referendum by the taxpayers, they were saying, okay, use this referendum for those expenditures. That is the root of spending authority. That is the basic tenet of municipal budgeting. So at the Board of Finance meeting in August, you guys reviewed the 23-24 fiscal year budget, which ended in June. And at that meeting, it was disclosed by Ingrid Massey, our town controller, that Quinnipiac University made the $300,000 payment to the town, but that it was being reported in the year-end revenue budget as 0 received. She explained the contribution was made with restrictions, and that the $300,000 would be spent on renovations at Northeast Firehouse. That's the one on Washington Avenue past Big Y. Mrs. Barrett expressed great concern about this payment being reported as 0, and also about how the money could be spent on the renovations, which were not in the budget. I checked all these past year revenue reports, year-end revenue reports, Mr. Chairman, and never did we report it as 0 if we received it. There was only 2 fiscal years we reported it as 0, and that's because we did not receive it. That was 2021 and 21-22. And I have all the reports if you'd like to look at them. Mr. Chairman, you supported Ingrid's description and explained that because of the restrictions by Quinnipiac, the payment was more like a grant. So it was really not revenue, and therefore would be spent on the firehouse renovations. At that August meeting, Mr. Chairman, you clearly confirmed the importance of the fact that the payment was made with restrictions. And I accepted this explanation, yours and Ingrid's, which is why I said nothing when I spoke at public comment. I thought, as long as the payment was made with restrictions, and as long as we reported it as zero in the year-end revenue, then I was fine with it. There was no violation of our town charter, no violation of state statute. I did not want to look a gift horse in the mouth. I was pleased with the payment being received, even if it was restricted. So here is what happened at the December 4th Board of Selectmen meeting. Mary White came to this microphone at public comment, and she asked about the Quinnipiac University voluntary payment and if we were getting it, because it had stopped for 2 years during COVID. And to their credit, they only missed 2 years, 2021 and 21-22. They actually restarted making their $300,000 voluntary payment in 22-23, 2 years ago. So Ms. White was trying to verify we received the money, and I, if you watch the video, I quickly interjected and I said, yes, we received it, but it was reported as zero in our reports because it was made with restrictions by Quinnipiac. Mr. Frieda immediately said, and I quote, "It wasn't their restrictions. They asked me where it could be spent. They are not restricting the money. I am saying where it goes," unquote. I was sitting right next to Mr. Frieda, and he must have heard my gasp of astonishment. Mr. Chairman, this charter does not tell us what to do. It tells us how we must do things. I have come before this board many times over the years with concerns about unauthorized spending. I challenged the use of hundreds of thousands of dollars of MRSA money, another regular revenue source, that was used to purchase public works equipment that was never budgeted for. I wasn't against the purchases. I just wanted to comply with the charter. I also challenged mid-fiscal year changes in the employment contract, in the employment table, which is part of the budget. And I cited 707 C and D of our charter, which states that you cannot spend money on stuff that's not budgeted for without the approval of the Board of Finance. And State Statute 7348, which says if the spending is more than $20,000, it must be approved at town meeting. This is why we needed a town meeting on June 25th of 2018 for the supernumerary program, $220,000. It's why we needed a town meeting in February 25th of 2019 for $750,000 for a new fire engine, because it wasn't in the budget. And again, let me emphasize, the $300,000 now being spent on Northeast renovations is not in our budget. I'm almost done. According to Mr. Frieda, when Quinnipiac asked where their contribution could be spent, his response was, "I was saying where it goes." We have a town government of boards and commissions. I don't think any single person could say that. Mr. Frieda explained that because he has such a positive relationship with Quinnipiac, they agreed, and that's great that they agreed, but that is not the right way to spend $300,000 on something not in our budget. In my legal opinion, the $300,000 needs to be before a town meeting. Mr. Chairman, at the August meeting, you and Ingrid were so careful to emphasize that Quinnipiac made the payment with their restrictions. You knew the importance of establishing the payment as a grant and not a revenue source. And that's why the finance office was able, in my opinion, to accurately report it as zero received in the year-end report. But all of that rationale sort of disappeared, in my very humble opinion, when Mr. Frieda said 2 weeks ago, they are not restricting the money, they meaning Quinnipiac. I am saying where it goes, unquote. But I think this is an easy fix. I have great confidence that if Mr. Frieda thinks that that money needs to be spent on those renovations, that it does need to be spent there. I can't imagine him wanting it spent there unless it was needed for a good purpose. I still don't know the purpose for the renovations. It was never really discussed. I believe that all we have to do is call a town meeting. So I'm going to give you Section 707 and the statute I referenced, Mr. Chairman. And all I'm going to ask is that you review those and think about what I've said, and I will trust you. You are a man of the highest integrity. I worked with you for 4 years, and I will leave it to your judgment. You could put this matter on your agenda next month to recommend the $300,000 renovation to Northeast, and the Board of Selectmen will call a town meeting. I will support that, and I will vote yes if there are good reasons for those renovations. And again, I believe that if Mr. Frieda says we need them, then I am sure we do. But I also believe in this, and there is a process in here, and it tells us what that process is. And when Mr. Frieda said, unlike you and Ingrid, that it was not given with any restrictions, the processes in here, in my opinion, should be followed. And that is all I really want to say about that. And I will happily hear any questions or comments. Again, I say this with the utmost respect for Mr. Frieda, and I think it's very easy to fix. That's the bottom line. It's a very easy matter to fix.
Well, let me start, and then I'm sure Mike will perhaps
Yeah,
fill
I
in.
just want to, if I may, I just want to hand you
Yeah,
these
thank you.
things.
Please. Thank
You
you.
can look at them and at your leisure decide what to do.
I guess I draw a distinction between a grantor asking the first selectman for ideas on where the money could best be used. And I think that's sometimes it happens, right? I called the Orange Congregational Church today. Why? Because my mother was a longtime parishioner there, and she passed away. And so my family's decided to make a Christmas contribution to the church. They, of course, were happy to accept. I asked them, where would this best be needed? I said, do you have a food bank? Which they don't. So at the end of the day, by the way, I'm just going to make a check out to the Orange Congregational Church for my family. Okay? If Quinnipiac says to Mike Frieda or anyone else, even yourself, if that was possible, where would this money best be used? And if the suggestion was at Northeast, and they say, yes, great idea, we want the money to go to Northeast, then that's what they want. Now, I couldn't make a meeting. Diane stepped in for me. I had talked to Jeff Denofer about this, and I apologize, I was trying to find the email while you were talking, which I can't locate. The part I do recall, without referencing the email, is that he said donor intent is important. And Nancy asked about this, as you, I'm sure, know, and I conveyed to the entire board that we don't have a written document from Quinnipiac, but we have a verbal conversation. Jeff made it clear that verbal conversations are just as binding as a written document, and that what's important is the donor's intent. And whether or not it came from Mr. Frieda as a suggestion where it might be needed, because as I'm sure you well know, when we redid the firehouses, that may be 10 years ago now, you probably remember better than I will. Okay.
2014 and 15, yeah.
Okay, so there we go. When we redid the firehouses 10 years ago, we had to do a little value engineering, and so we never were able to finish out the second floor Northeast, which needs to be done in times of crisis for the volunteer firemen and women. And also, there's been times where we've had, storms and power outages in towns, and we need places in town, which we've used, the school sometimes for safety, security, and warmth, right? So I don't doubt for a minute the quote you just read and what occurred to meeting, which I unfortunately haven't seen. But that's my understanding of the issue. I understand what you're saying about the charter. Heretofore, I looked at it more as an accounting question, and
So what?
an accounting question.
Okay.
Meaning we have a new accounting firm. We had an accounting firm before, but they're the best ones to judge whether or not it's restricted or not. But putting aside for just a moment the legal side, from all I know about the facts of the situation, Quinnipiac has asked that the money be used to renovate the second floor Northeast.
Okay.
And with that,
That's
I
not
guess
what
I'd ask,
Mr. Yep,
I'd ask Mike to please fill in.
Yeah, so.
That's not what Mr. Frieda said at the meeting. He
Well, I want to
said
give him
it
a
was
chance to talk at this
his
meeting.
idea. Yes, I would love to.
So the way it's worked for all these years, it was framed incorrectly at one of these meetings here about Quinnipiac put restrictions on the money. My response was, they don't put restrictions on the money. We have a great relationship with Quinnipiac, largely due to my relationship with John Leahy in the past and Judy Olean in the present. We only got to $300,000 because of me. And the way it works down through the years, and then I'll tell you where I think that what we should have done years ago that we didn't do. The way it works is they say to me, we'd like to give you a voluntary payment. Because of an experience they had with another municipality, where the municipality would put it in the general fund as a source of just trying to make a budget. They wanted the money to go somewhere. They don't tell me where it's going to go. They say, Mike, we'd like to get your suggestions. We did playscapes, all the elementary schools. At Ridge Road School, it was one of the most compelling scenes to see all these young children who were visually impaired. Quinnipiac helped underwrite that. So every time we got the voluntary payment, I offer suggestions as to where it goes. They're not restrictions, they're suggestions. And I think that was the problem here, was positioned
Yes,
as a restriction.
because Ingrid and the chair said that the money was paid with restrictions.
So
That's, yeah.
the money, what really is the reality, the money is to be spent based on a mutual agreement between Mike Frieda and Quinnipiac as to where it goes. What should have happened years ago, it never should have been put in as a revenue item.
There you go.
And it should have been outside the budget. But we did it for all those years. Ed and I, Rich and I,
Yeah.
it should have never been done that way.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I recall, I thought I recalled those playscapes being done with LoCIP money, but
No.
local capital improvement program
Some
monies.
were, some were not.
But maybe not. But
Monowese.
either way, I agree with you. And in fact, one of the biggest disagreements you and I ever had, Michael, was about this voluntary payment before it started, about whether or not to have a memorandum of understanding in writing or not.
Right.
And I wanted it in writing, and you did not. You said your handshake with Dr. Leahy was sufficient, and I said, well, college presidents come and go. I don't know if you remember
I do.
our disagreement. It was a very respectful disagreement, but I wanted something in writing. Call it the lawyer and me. We like everything in writing. And it's funny because if I remember correctly, it was originally modeled to increase as their assessed value increased. You remember that? Because of course their property is assessed, but it's just exempt because it's for university. But they still get it. They still get an assessment. And if I remember correctly, and I'm sure you do, that it was supposed to increase with each year as their net value increased.
Right.
And I thought, well, we've got to get that in writing, you know. But anyway, that was going to be my next suggestion, that it not be in the budget, because that's why I started my comments explaining to the folks the basic format of a budget. The revenue in our budget is there. It's anticipated revenue. Yes, 85% of our revenue budget is taxes, and those are fairly predictable because we know we're going to collect 98 to 99% of it. But some of it is unpredictable. So I know it's estimated revenue, but when they vote yes on the budget, they're saying use that money for these expenses. And we're not using this money for anything in the budget. That's the problem I have, and that's why I think it causes an issue with this document, the town charter, which says that if we spend money on something not in the budget, the Board of Finance has to approve it, and if it's more than 20,000, you know, 7-348 says it has to go to a town meeting. So I understand what you're saying about the distinction between a grantor and restrictions, but were they a grantor? Was this a grant? You're treating it like a grant, but it was a revenue line item. So, again, I never objected to what happened in August. You weren't at the meeting in August, Mr. Frieda. I was here, and I heard Ingrid and I heard Tim say it's reported as 0 because it's got restrictions, and I was fine with it. I said, oh, okay, 0 in the revenue budget. So I didn't say boo, but your comments confused me at the Board of Selectmen meeting. However, I didn't say anything then because you know me. I got to do my research. I got to make sure I heard it right. I got to make sure I heard the Board of Finance meeting in August right. I got to look, and I spent hours of my time when I should have been Christmas shopping looking at all this crap. And I did it because I wanted to be careful, because I respect you and I wanted to be accurate. But I think moving forward, if we leave it out of the budget, fine. But, you know, contrary to what you may think, Mrs. Barrett and I disagree an awful lot on budgeting matters. And one of our biggest disagreements was over this. And, you know, she insisted on questioning how it was accounted and how it was spent. And looking now, hindsight is 20/20, I think she was right to question it. And she was just doing her job. And so I just wanted to say that. But we disagreed terribly on this because I listened to what was said at the August meeting. It might have been misleading, but I listened to it at its fair word value. And I had no problem with it. So moving forward, let's work together and do this the right way.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get the money, but even if I was able to reconcile that, this $300,000 is not going to be in the revenue item in the future. That I can assure everybody here.
Well,
because if you look at this,
yeah.
they didn't create the problem. The fact that we, going back years ago, put it in as revenue and didn't change it, it becomes our issue, not their issue. Because they're just giving the money because of the relationship. They say, Mike, where would you like to spend it? And sometimes, you know, they've said to me, we're not sure if that's what we'd like to do. All right, I'll come up with another option. So this $300,000 is not going to appear in this budget anymore, but...
Well, you know, speaking about getting it, you know, and what you just said, I think is right on point, that this was our problem for putting it in the budget and creating these tensions.
Yes.
So any suggestions that comments made at public meetings, and I think you're referring to Mrs. Barrett, is the reason why they might stop making the payments. Maybe they should understand that this was our fault for how we put it in the budget. And so given how we put it in the budget, these arguments, these contentious meetings were inevitable. And so if they really care about helping our town, the way we handled it from the beginning shouldn't affect their decision to make or not make the contribution. It's great publicity for them. They get to put in their literature and their blogs, whatever, we contributed this, and we're helping with the fire safety and blah, blah, blah. You know, Yale gives New Haven $10 million. Probably more by now. That's the last time I looked, it was that. It's probably more. You know, universities routinely give money. So I hope they'll still consider it. And if you have the great rapport with them that you say you do, and I am sure that you do, you could explain to them that if there's been things said at these meetings that they don't like, it's because of how we budgeted it.
All right, I
And
think,
not because
Sally,
of who
if I
said
could.
what. So,
I don't think Quinnipiac University needs to hear about our budgeting, to be honest with you.
Well-
But I hear you.
okay,
I'll be happy to look at this. I'll reconfer with Jeff and probably also Ingrid and Mike, and we will report back in the general meeting.
That's all I ask.
Thank
Thank you for your time and
You're welcome.
attention. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And we'll work this out. That's
Thank
what
you.
I believe.
Okay.
All right? But your comments shocked me. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you,
I
Sally.
did not hear the gasp, by the way, I want you to know. I didn't hear the gasp, so, okay.
Any other members like to speak? There are 3 of you. All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion?
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Happy holidays,
Thank
everyone.
you. Exactly. Happy holidays.
Happy New Year.
Yep.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.